Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at The Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land, another time.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. Today, I'm really going to dive into a topic that every single one of us faces. We all face resistance, and it can show up in so many different places. It shows up in our work, it shows up in our relationships, and even in the way we approach our own personal growth. So we're going to dig into what exactly is resistance. I want to look at too, how do you know that you're resisting something? And most importantly, how can you stop resisting? These are the three things that I find people want to know about the most when we start to work together. So stick with me for the next 15 or 20 minutes as I unpack these questions and then also talk about the benefits of letting go of this resistance and how all of these wonderful possibilities can unfold when you choose to open up instead of resist. So, what is resistance? Resistance really, it's psychological and emotional. So it's our mind and our heart mixed together. And it shows up when we're confronted with change. We're uncomfortable or anything that challenges our current beliefs, habits, or identity. So again, any kind of change where we're potentially uncomfortable, then anything that might challenge our current beliefs, which leads to change, right? Our habits or our identity. It's that feeling of pushing back against something, even when we know it might benefit us. And sometimes we resist and we're not even really sure that we're resisting because our subconscious has taken over. So, in many ways, resistance is our ego. And our ego is trying to keep us in the known. And why is that? Because it wants us to be comfortable. Our ego wants us to be safe. Our minds are wired to avoid discomfort, and resistance is this protective mechanism that kicks in when we feel uncertain, when we feel out of control, because control just basically is fear. There is no such thing as control, really. So when we feel uncertain, our mind, our ego starts to protect us and we resist. And many of us have felt resistance in many different ways, right? It might be in the form of procrastination. Now, I'm not talking about those of us that have a Myers-Briggs that we like to be open to possibilities. Some of us, myself included, are open to possibilities. And so we're gathering data. And until we feel like we've gotten all the data, we're then not ready. Now, if we have a deadline, we're going to make that deadline. But I'll give you an example. I used to write my papers and edit them and turn them in on the day that they were due for my master's program. And I tried to write them before then, but I was still gathering data. So then I would make changes to them. So I had systems in place to do that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pure procrastination. You stick your head in the sand, you watch Netflix until you numb out, any of those types of things to procrastinate stepping into what it is you feel like you want to do. It also takes the form of self-doubt, this imposter syndrome, or sometimes this outright avoidance that I was talking about. It's really that nagging feeling that you have when you know you want to make a change, but you keep finding reasons not to. And here's a little clue, right, as to one of the things that we do, and that's coming up with excuses. So resistance can feel like we've got this mental block. We can have physical tension, clenching our jaws. And it can even be this gut feeling that's telling us this isn't right when deep down we know it is. This deep knowing that we know something is right. Excuse me. So if we have some of that, then how can you really tell that you're resisting? That's a question I get from clients. So, and I typically turn it around and say, well, what do you think? Because a lot of times they're resisting the resistance. So, how do you know when you're resisting something? Do you see some patterns? I'll share a few clear signs with you that tend to be telltale signs for people that they're starting to go into resistance mode or they are resisting. Earlier, I talked about procrastination, right? We delay or we avoid doing something even when we know it's necessary. Now, fear and excitement feel the same way in our bodies. So we need to make the choice of excitement. And when you can get excited, then we stop procrastinating, right? We may want to start a new project. We may need to have a difficult conversation with an employee or take a step toward a goal. And that stops us because we try to avoid it, right? An example would be too, we can become overwhelmed with something or anxious about it. And if we feel overwhelmed, like sometimes when I go to simplify, I look at my house and I'm like, whoa, this could be overwhelming. This could take me weeks of just focusing straight on that, right? So I could hire someone to come in. I have a friend that does those things. I could hire her to come in and help me take care of some of the clutter that I want to get rid of, or I could set up different processes to do that. And I'll get into that here in a bit about taking bite-sized pieces to do that, right? But sometimes we can go into this overwhelm, and that's a decision too, right? Like I've chosen to not do overwhelm anymore. Doesn't mean that I don't have some anxiety once in a while. It doesn't mean that I get close to feeling like I've got too much on my plate. But that thought of being overwhelmed tends to come around too when we ask ourselves to do something new or different. And the more that we think about it, the more stressed we get or the more anxious we get. That's a sure sign that you're resisting something. We also, I mentioned earlier, come up with some excuses. And man, I am really good about coming up with excuses that sound very justified, very brainy as to why I'm not going to do it. Now, we have the law of gestation, and there is a period of time for things. But when I'm using that as an excuse, then that is a rationalization in order for me to stay comfortable. And that is a sure sign for me that I'm resisting. Another one is looking at what's the word I want to use here? It's not really habits, but these themes, right? Of patterns that maybe I've noticed in myself where something new is getting ready to happen. And so then I have these patterns where maybe I kind of step back and I don't get involved in as many things, or I start to numb out to Netflix. I feel like I've watched a lot of TV with being sick recently. But we start to really notice these kind of habits that we've created. One of them for me was I would say all the time that I'm tired. And I would self-sabotage because I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired, so I can't go home and do anything, right? I can't unclutter, I can't do projects, whatever. But that was sabotage. That was me telling myself that I couldn't do what I wanted to do, right? And so that's a sure tell sign too. And so unwind, notice those patterns. And if you need some help noticing, holler. That's what I do, right? I'm happy to help you with that. Another one is our body, right? So we might have physical symptoms. And I will say, like, I've been sick. Now, I believe I caught this influenza A from someone, but I also know I've been around sick people a lot. And I don't tend to get sick very often. And so sometimes it's a leveling up, right? Like I'm resisting something and my body says you need to rest because you're getting ready to level up. So I choose to look at it as that I'm getting ready to level up, right? And this resistance shows up where I get sick, I'm tired, I don't sleep well, I might gain a little bit of weight because I'm continuing to resist that. So notice those physical symptoms that happen, excuse me, in your body that might be a telltale sign that you're resisting some of this. So if any of those sound familiar, it may be an indication that you're starting to or in a state of resistance. And really the key to that is recognizing that resistance is a normal part of growth, but it doesn't have to control who we are, right? We can make the decision, and that's the key piece, is making the decision. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and I'm going to talk about how do you stop resistance? How do you step out of that area where you're resisting in your life and move forward? So we'll be right back. I want to give a quick shout out to my favorite online community for women entrepreneurs. It's called Build Her. If you've craved a space to connect with other women who truly get the journey, this is your space. We go live monthly for in-depth training on all things business, and it's where you'll get the latest news from the Lit Up Life first. Plus a chance to swap stories, tips, and triumphs with an amazing community of women. It's welcoming, it's fun, and it's where we cheer each other on through every up and down of entrepreneurship. Join us and let's build each other up. Check it out at thelituplife.com/build her. Okay, welcome back, folks. We talked about this idea of what resistance is. We've talked about what might be some signs that you're resisting. And I would say, take a step back. It doesn't have to be just the things I've talked about, right? It could be other things that you've noticed. And awareness is that key, right? So now that we know what this resistance is, how we can identify it, then how do we stop it? How do we stop hitting that wall, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results and not getting them? So here's some things that I found to be very helpful and that I teach on, obviously, because that's what I'm talking about today. Really, the first step is awareness. And this is actually a key component to servant leadership as well, a characteristic. And this awareness and uncovering and being able to see the patterns, being able to become aware of when I step into certain behavior or when I start behaving a certain way, that's a realization that I'm resisting something. A key thing for me is when I'm feeling the emotion of anger, because anger has always been a little bit scary for me. Now, I didn't have parents that blew up. I never saw anyone deal with anger, right? It was just not something we observed or I observed in my childhood. And so I can tell that I'm resisting doing an anger project when all of a sudden I'm screaming at the guy, not really screaming, but I'm yelling or saying something derogatory to another driver when in fact they can't hear me, nor do they care. And that's a sure tell sign to me that I'm resisting processing through some emotion and particularly anger. And so this awareness, so many times we're on autopilot that we don't even realize we're putting up these walls. And so having a discipline of meditation once in a while and start small, right? Like you're at the stoplight or you're stopped in traffic, do like 30 seconds of meditation and say, what do I need to be open up? What do I need to be open to and be aware of in my own behavior? What am I resisting right now? And it's amazing what will come to you. Now, don't just throw it away and say, oh, that's not what I'm resisting. Be open to it because the universe, God, whatever it is for you, is going to give you those messages. So be open to and willing to accept them. Then, a lot of times I hear people say, well, ask yourself why. Why are you resisting? Why to me gets a little defensive because it gives this idea for me of judgment, right? That there's a right or wrong to it. And I say, ask what questions? Like, what might I be afraid of here? What's uncomfortable about this situation? What's on the other side of this uncomfortability or this resistance? Like, what's coming and what's here right now, but I'm just not open and willing to accept it because fear is really what resistance is tied to. We're afraid of something, and it could be fear of failure. It could be fear of someone judging us. It could be fear of the unknown, what's coming. And all we have is today. And so when you stay present, the unknown becomes less scary. And once I'm able to figure out that underlying fear, then that becomes easier for me to step back and face it. So really take the time to dig in here, right? Like stop this if you need to and think about what you're resisting and what might you be afraid of. And again, ask the what questions. And then earlier I mentioned this about taking small steps because you don't want to kick yourself into overwhelm as a way to sabotage yourself. So sometimes when we feel this overwhelm and we feel like something's too big, all we have to do is break it down into bite-sized pieces. Right now, I like to be open to possibilities. So I don't love it when my schedule is back to back to back to back, or if I feel a lot of pressure about something. So make it manageable, right? Break it down into the smaller steps, make it manageable. And as an example, I've been on a journey to eating the way that I want to eat. I've actually lost quite a bit of weight since September. And I've done that more so because I've broken things down into smaller things. I've managed the steps a little bit differently and realized that it's going to take more time. I've been sold this, I've bought into this diet culture that everything happens quick and fast. And honestly, it's happening a lot quicker and a lot easier than it has in the past. And so I've broken it down into it's going to take a year to be where I want to be or a little bit more. So break it down, make it manageable for you. Like with my house, I know in one weekend I'm not going to declutter everything, but I know I can take a time this weekend to clean out my pantry and get rid of things I don't need. I know I can spend another day on another weekend or even an hour cleaning out a drawer, right? So start with something small. And then as you build momentum, that resistance starts to fade because you step more and more into the excitement. And that's where this next one comes into hand is you're going to shift your mindset because we're reframing it from being a challenge into looking for an opportunity for growth. So instead of viewing this task as something to fear or feeling overwhelmed, we see it as a way to evolve. We see it as a way to level up. And so remind yourself of the benefits and the potential positive outcomes of moving through this resistance. And then I love this. I've said this for years. Embrace the discomfort. So a lot of times our growth edges come with some discomfort. And this is what I've said for years, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Let me say that again. Get comfortable feeling uncomfortable because it's in those moments of discomfort where we grow the most. And the more we embrace it, the easier it becomes then to move through that resistance. So why would you want to move through resistance? What does it benefit us to do that? So it really opens us up. So when you resist, you're really closed up. And for those of you on YouTube, you can see me, but those of you that are listening, I'm clenching, right? And when you're clenching something, you're closed off. But when I start to open up, then the world of possibilities start to come to play. So some of the benefits that can come to you is freedom, right? Like this peace of mind, because resistance takes a lot of energy from us. And when you let it go, like in Al Anon, I used to have someone that said to me, everything I let go of had claw marks on it, right? So letting this go brings a sense of peace and calm. And you can stop fighting against yourself and you sleep better. You stop stressing about things. The anxiety goes away, right? It can also increase your creativity and flow. So when we're not resisting, we tap into this natural creativity, this natural flow, ease. So ideas come more easily. We're more open to inspiration. We're more creative. And all of those things then help us flow through life easier and more peaceful. Now, when we also let go of resistance, it allows that growth edge to happen. We learn new things, we develop new skills, we become more resilient in the face of challenges. And, along with that, it allows us to have deeper connection because our heart opens up. Because when we stop resisting in relationships, particularly, we become more open, we become more vulnerable. And sometimes people get scared with vulnerability, but we become more authentic. Right. So don't be afraid of being vulnerable. Just think about it as being more authentic. And that leads to a deeper connection. It leads to a more meaningful connection with other people and with yourself, frankly. And then lastly, I want to leave you with one of the benefits too, is it aligns with it's this alignment with yourself and your true purpose. And it's about living a congruent life because when we let go, we move closer to living this lit up life, to leading a life that feels authentic, purpose driven, and fulfilling. So when we open up, these amazing things can happen. Like I mentioned, we become more aligned with our inner desires and opportunities then start to flow in our lives. I always give the example that I had this idea that I wanted to have other coaches coaching for me. And when I owned that and said, yeah, I do want that, all of a sudden I had 5 people asking me if they could coach for me. And so God, the universe provides that, right? We attract the people, the resources, and the situations or the circumstances to then help us grow. Now, sometimes those circumstances are not necessarily what we asked for because the growth edge, right? And this idea that circumstances and people appear to show us where we're free and where we're also not free. But what happens in this when we stop resisting is then we become clearer. Our intuition, we're open to our intuition. We begin to trust ourselves more. And we start living in that alignment, that congruency of who we really are. And frankly, that's where true fulfillment lies. And that's when we're leading a lit up life. So when you open up, you create space for abundance, and scarcity leaves, right? So whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, letting go of that resistance allows you to receive more. Those 5 coaches wanting to come in, I've got them coaching for me now. And it adds more depth to the mastermind that I run. So it allows you to receive more of what you want. And whether that's love, success, money, or inner peace, it allows you to open up to that. So, as I wrap up today's episode, I really would encourage you to reflect on, where is resistance showing up in your life? And what are you holding back from? So, take a minute to answer that. Where is resistance showing up for you? Could be in a relationship or wanting to have a relationship. It could be in a work situation. It could be attracting additional clients. And what are you holding back from? And what fears are keeping you from moving forward? And honestly, the more honest you can be with yourself is the further you will grow, right? If we stop, it's like this continuum. You'll stop your growth, but the more we're honest, the more we'll have this growth and this moving forward. So I want to leave you with this. Remember, first of all, that resistance is normal, it's natural, but it doesn't have to stop you. And if you can recognize it, take those small steps and reframe your mindset, you can break free from its hold. And so open yourself up to leading this lit up life and have growth, peace, and alignment with your true purpose. And it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it. So thank you for joining me today on this Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser podcast. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might be facing resistance in their own life. And let's all move forward together. So until next time, stay open, resist the ability to resist resistance. Did you hear what I did there? So stay open, stay courageous, and keep leading your lit up life. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.